Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome to my 2027 Oscar predictions for February of 2026. Now, if this is the first video of mine you're clicking on in terms of the 2027 Oscar predictions video, I implore you to go back and check out January's video, which came out a few days prior, as this is essentially just an extension of that video. And if you want to know why certain things are already on the list, for what reason, what arguments do I have about it, the rules that I've kind of set upon this year's Oscar predictions videos, you're definitely going to want to see that one, as it pretty much covers everything you need to. For now, sit back, relax. We're going to continue things off with all the February films that came out in theaters first that have Oscar potential, of which there really is only one. Wuthering Heights. A passionate and tumultuous love story set against the backdrop of the Yorkshire moors, exploring the intense and destructive relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw. I think it's very easy to just kind of dismiss Wuthering Heights as a film that just crashed and burned and thus doesn't have any real shot at getting into the Oscars. And while that's all really going to be dependent on how the rest of the potential nominees in these categories are going to go, I do admit that there is some heavy hitters that worked on the individual aspects of what could potentially be Oscar nominations. For instance, in cinematography, you have Linus Sandgren, who has won an Oscar in the past. In costume design, you have Jacqueline Durand, who has been nominated 9 times and has won twice. And in production design, you have Susie Davies, who's been nominated twice in this category. So, while again, it is easy to just kind of dismiss this film as, oh, well, that's not going to go anywhere, just the fact that there is talent behind the camera in terms of like the technical aspects, I think it is worthy of keeping in consideration. At the very least, one of these categories could be a surprise. It just sneaks in if the rest of the year doesn't just have something else that is also a very strong contender in those categories. So that's kind of my take on it right now. But again, if we do see stronger things, Wuthering Heights will eventually fall off my list. Now, the only one that I'm actually just kind of having fun with here is for the song Chains of Love. This is a song by Charlie XCX. And so I'm not confident in this one getting in whatsoever, but as song is one of those categories that I probably would end up leaving blank until like close to the end of the year, just to kind of put things into that category. I thought, why the hell not? Let's just throw that one in there as well. But again, I don't really have much hope in that one really getting into the Oscars by the end of the day. But you never know. If it does, I called it here first. And that's all the theatrical releases that came out in February that I think have somewhat of a possibility getting into the Oscars. But there was also a big film festival which saw some potential nominees premiere. And so we're going to go through that one. That is the Berlin Film Festival in alphabetical order. Sit back, relax. Let's dive into the Berlin Film Festival now. Bucks Harbor. In coastal Maine, harsh winters, fishing traditions, and strict parental values mold young men. Bucks Harbor shows life where physical strength determines a man's value. I feel this is a documentary that could go very far into the Oscars and get nominated if it tackles its subject just right. If it really presents this film as the toxicity of masculinity and how it severely impacts the young men in this culture, I guess you could say. But if it kind of tackles it as more of a, like that machoism, like, oh yeah, this is where boys become men type deal, I feel that could ultimately be kind of seen as the wrong message to send out. So really, it's all just going to depend on how the documentary gets tackled. I'm guessing, though, that it is more of the former, or at the very least, it's presented a very fascinating, unique way, because this one did end up winning second place at the Panorama section at the Berlin Film Festival. So there is something there, and I am keeping a close eye on it. However, as I now have 8 nominees in this category, I'm going to have to get rid of one. And to be honest, I'm just really not going to include this one in my top 5 for right now. I did still want to give it a mention because, again, I could see it going all the way, especially if it tackles that subject in that way, as I mentioned. But for now, I'm not quite ready to really keep it in my 5. I feel it's on the outside looking in, and we'll see what the trajectory ends up being like. Everybody digs Bill Evans. Legendary jazz pianist Bill Evans forms his perfect trio, recording 2 groundbreaking albums. When his brilliant young bassist dies tragically, Evans is devastated. The story follows Evans' journey to overcome grief and return to music. This is the majority of the performances, which I hear are absolutely outstanding. First and foremost, in the lead actor category, you have Anders Danielson Lee, who does play the protagonist here. That is Bill Evans. If that name does sound familiar, that was the boyfriend in The Worst Person in the World, who was the person who made most people cry in that movie. So if you were a big fan of that performance, hey, maybe this is another one you should check out. I don't know how big his name is in terms of general knowledge, general audiences, I should say. Probably not very, and so his odds of getting into the Oscars by the end of the day probably aren't very good. But again, wanted to give him a shout out just because I hear he is fantastic in this film. A couple of supporting performances as well that I hear are like the standouts. You have Bill Pullman as Bill Evans' father, who I hear just absolutely steals the show in every single scene he's in. You also have Laurie Metcalf as the mother, who I hear is also fantastic. As you know, she was previously nominated, so it'd be cool to get her back into the Oscar circle. And then because the film is in black and white, I did want to throw it into the cinematography as well. Just whenever you have black and white, the Oscars tend to go gaga for that shit. So I'm not going to dismiss it because I don't want to be surprised if it does end up showing up. If only because, again, it's black and white and that's what the Oscars love. But that's what I have. Again, I don't know if these will go on to go all the way to get a nomination. I think it's very unlikely. But again, want to give these shout outs. I want to let people know about these films, these performances that might have gone under the radar otherwise. So hopefully you guys now want to check this film out. Narciso. Young, handsome, daring, desired by both men and women, whilst his only love was rock and roll. One night, his body appears tied to his bed, completely burnt. How do you hear a premise like that and not want to immediately check out the film? This is an international feature film and ended up winning first place in the Panorama section. So yes, a movie I am very much looking forward to seeing and keeping a close eye on. I mentioned this in the last video, but international feature film is quite stacked. As we get further on in the year with these videos, you will see a lot of these films just don't stand a chance of getting in by the end of the day. But I still wanted to give a shout out just because, again, interesting premise. It won a major prize. People should be checking it out if they get a chance to do so. Prosecution. After a racist assault, prosecutor Seo Kim pursues her own case through the courts, challenging both her attackers and a legal system that ignores right-wing extremism. This one's more for fun. The reviews on this one have been very good, and there is some talk that this could potentially be an international feature film contender, but this really has more the makings of a thriller. Like, as I understand, there's a little bit of action here and there. So I don't think this one really has any chance of getting in, if I'm being completely honest. But just because, again, the reviews have been very good and there has been some talk that it could be a player, I did want to include it here. Again, shout outs whenever I can. But that's really all I have. It didn't really win any prizes at Berlin, so really this one's just gonna be for fun. Queen at Sea. As dementia erodes a woman's ability to communicate her inner life, her husband and daughter struggle to act in her best interests, navigating love and the fragile boundaries between care, protection, and autonomy. Those of you who are more in the Oscar know-how have probably heard Queen at Sea and the performances behind it being the stand-out things in the film. So I did want to, again, give a shout out to the performances on display here. Mainly Juliette Binoche, who here completely crushes it here. Juliette has been nominated twice before, has won once. It'd be really cool to see her back in the Oscar circle. It's been some time here. Will this be the one that do it? Probably not, but again, you gotta give the shout outs whenever you can. Also wanted to give a shout out to Anna Calder-Marshall, who does play the mother who's going through dementia, and those type of performances, if you nail it just right, They get the tear ducts flowing. You know, those are the ones that really get singled out in terms of potential nominations here. And as a fun aside, for those of you who like interesting trivia, Anna here actually previously played the protagonist in Wuthering Heights, which I just talked about. So what are the odds of that happening? Just thought it'd be a cool little thing to mention there. It has no bearing on anything. Just, I like little facts like that. Also, I did want to mention, I did throw cinematographer Adolfo Veloso on here. He just got nominated for Train Dreams, so I'm keeping a close eye on him to see if that was just a fluke or if this is a serious cinematographer that's going to be making multiple appearances at the Oscars. So, had to throw him in there as well. Rose. A woman in the early 17th century who is disguised as a man and wants to be a good citizen at any cost. Okay, if you didn't hear about Queen at Sea, you most definitely heard about Rose because of Sandra Hüller, who is gonna have a spectacular year this year. I mean, she has the potential of showing up in like both lead and supporting multiple times this year. So it's going to be quite fun to keep track of all the possibilities of her getting in. And it starts with Rose, which I'll admit is probably her weakest chance of getting in. I just don't think the film is going to be big enough to really push her all the way to the nomination. Yes, it also has a chance of getting into international feature film, but again, with that category being so stacked, I think it's eventually going to get pushed out, and there basically tanks her chances of getting in for this film. But don't feel bad for her, because trust me, she has a lot more chances of getting in. I really can see her getting double nominations by the end of the year. So we'll keep a close eye on her, but for now, here's her first appearance. Sad Girls. Two teen swimmers in Mexico prep for a major competition in Brazil while dealing with trauma that transforms their friendship. This one won the Crystal Bear in the 14+ section at the Berlin Film Festival, and as such, I'm very, very interested in seeing it, especially because I hear this is not a happy story. It is very, very depressing, and maybe because of that, it's nowhere near an Oscar contender. Like, people want more cheery tales. Although, I don't know, there's been stories in the past that have gotten into the Oscars where I'm like, man, that's just fucking depressing. And you kind of left it going, yeah, I don't feel good about any of this. So, who knows? For now, though, it rounds out my top 5 for international feature film. But trust me when I say very, very soon, we're going to have to start knocking some of these out. What Will I Become? Co-directors Lexi and Logan intertwine narratives of two trans boys lost to suicide with their trans masculine plus community, sharing resources and envisioning paths forward. An important topic, an interesting title, it's won multiple awards, and it speaks about something very important to our times right now. So yes, I think this has all the makings of a documentary feature film nominee. Now we gotta talk about what I'm gonna knock out. Wow, 9 of these fuckers. Ah, Jesus Christ. I'll probably knock out To Hold a Mountain. I mean, yeah, at this point in time, it's just gonna seem crazy no matter what I do, so... And there's more documentaries coming, so it's gonna continue getting hard. Man, documentary, when you really dive deep into, like, the potentials... it really gets hard to think about what could go on to get nominated because there's so many things that sound really good. So, yeah, the struggles. And they're good struggles because it makes you want to see all the films. A Woman's Place is Everywhere. Twin sisters risk losing their 30-year home after their mother's death. A memory-filled loft capturing art, family bonds, and NYC's past. What a title. This one ended up going on to win the Silver Bear at the Berlin Film Festival. So yes, I'm going to be keeping another close eye on this one. As I just said with the previous documentary, there is so many great documentary films when you really start to dive deep into the category. And it's a great problem to have because you have all these fantastic movies to look forward to. But it makes it hard when you ultimately have so many films vying for control of who's going to get to the top that... yeah, it makes it exciting, so it is definitely a good problem to have. Yellow Letters. The marriage of Derya and Aziz is under pressure after losing their jobs because of state arbitrariness and moving to Istanbul to live with Aziz's parents. They and their 13-year-old daughter Izgi have to redefine their way of life. This is the final film I'll be talking about today, and it is from the director that did The Teacher's Lounge, which did get into the International Film Features at the Oscars a few years ago. A damn good movie, if one that I just really disliked the ending of, but hey, the majority of the film was really good. So yes, most definitely keeping an eye on it. I think Iker Katak has proven himself, and thus seems like, as of right now in my list here, the most viable choice of getting in. But now I have to get rid of one. This really isn't a hard pick because I just talked about this earlier, but I'm gonna cross out Prosecution for now. As I said, that seemed more like a thriller, so that was more for fun. It's an easy enough removal, but please keep it on your radar if you can. Just again, because even if it doesn't end up being an Oscar contender, it still could be a very good film that you will enjoy. So that's all I got for this month. All right, before we wrap up, let's go over all my predictions that I have as of right now. Once again, if this is the first video you're seeing and you're like, hey, where did that film come from? Go back and see my January predictions. If you want to deep dive into every single thing that is on here that I didn't talk about in this video, it's because it's in the previous video. And yeah, that's all I got. Let's dive right into it. For actor, my current predictions are Anders Danielson Lai for Everybody Digs Bill Evans, Kingsley Benadir for Frank and Lewis, John Turturro for The Only Living Pickpocket in New York, Ethan Hawke for The Wait. For actress, my predictions are Lubna Azabal for Hot Water, Mason Reeves for Josephine, Juliette Binoche for Queen at Sea, Sandra Hüller for Rose. For adapted screenplay, my predictions are Will McCormick and Rashida Jones for The Invite. For animated feature film, I currently do not have any predictions. For animated short film, my predictions are Stephen P. Neary for Living with a Visionary, Don Hertzfeldt for Paper Trail. For Best Picture, my predictions are Josephine. For casting, my predictions are Nina Henninger, Nafis Kaptawanwala, and Sarah Kliblin for Josephine. For cinematography, my predictions are Piers McGrail for Everybody Digs Bill Evans, Greta Zazula for Josephine, Adolfo Veloso for Queen at Sea, Linus Sandgren for Wuthering Heights. For costume design, my predictions are Jacqueline Duran for Wuthering Heights. For director, my predictions are Beth de Arajo for Josephine. For documentary feature film, my predictions are Po C. Tang for American Doctor, Felipe Bustos Sierra for Everybody to Kenmore Street, Alex Gibney for Knife, The Attempted Murder of Salman Rushdie, J.M. Harper for Soul Patrol, and Lexi Bean and Logan Rosos for What Will I Become. For documentary short film, my predictions are Stephen Curry and Ben Proudfoot for The Baddest Speechwriter of All, Ariel Knight for The Boys and the Bees, Fanny Texier for A Woman's Place is Everywhere. For film editing, my predictions are Anisha Acharya, Nico Lunin, and Carl Ritter for Josephine. For international feature film, my predictions are Hossein Keshavarez and Miriam Atai for The Friend's House is Here, Marcello Martinezzi for Narciso, Marcus Schleinzer for Rose, Fernanda Tovar for Sad Girls, and Ilker Katak for Yellow Letters. For live action short film, my predictions are Lily Platt for Crisis Actor, Chloe Leigh King for Don't Tell Mama, Eduardo Bron Costa for The Liars. For makeup and hairstyling, my predictions are Flora Moody for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, Zofia Otvos and Agustin Zombor for Wicker. For original score, my predictions are Miles Ross for Josephine. For original screenplay, my predictions are Beth de Arajo for Josephine, Noah Segan for The Only Living Pickpocket in New York. For original song, my predictions are Chains of Love from Wuthering Heights. For production design, my predictions are Susie Davies for Wuthering Heights. For sound, my predictions are David Gertzman and John Lawless for Undertone. For supporting actor, my predictions are Bill Pullman for Everybody Digs Bill Evans, Rob Morgan for Frank and Lewis, Channing Tatum for Josephine. For supporting actress, my predictions are Laurie Metcalf for Everybody Digs Bill Evans, Gemma Chan for Josephine, Anna Calder Marshall for Queen at Sea. And lastly, for visual effects, I currently do not have any predictions. And that is it for February. A little bit of a shorter video this time around. The film festival wasn't as big as Sundance in terms of having potential Oscar contenders, and even then, some of these are really quite stretching it. But for right now, or I should say for February, they were definitely films to keep on your radar, and I would argue are still worthy of keeping on your radar. If not for the Oscars, then at least have a good time with a movie. So come on, guys, give these films a chance. For now, I am going to be working on my March video that will hopefully be coming out in a few days. Again, if worse comes to worse, I get busy, things happen. I'm hoping to at least bring it out in about a week or so. So be patient with me as I get caught up. Hopefully by the time we finish June, I will be ready to do June predictions. If not, July, I guess it'll have to be. But hopefully you're enjoying these. Again, give me your feedback. Do you feel any of these films have any shot at going over to the Oscars? Have you seen any of these movies? And what films are going to be coming out in the future that you cannot wait for me to put on the list? Until the next video, everybody, like always, stay safe out there and have a good one.